Hey everybody, welcome to Hammer Down on the Market Scale Network. I'm your host, Mike Bush, and I'm coming to you from a super cool venue today. I'm at the ACT Expo in Las Vegas, ACT being Advanced Clean Transportation. So this is actually one of my favorite shows of the year, and let me tell you why. When we hear about a more sustainable future, when we hear about cleaner trucking or cleaner transportation, this is the show to find the technology companies and the companies that are really pioneering it. Not just incremental steps. We're going to see folks that are building EVs, hydrogen vehicles, all sorts of cool add-ons and solving problems that, quite frankly, I don't even know existed. I love this show, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm so thankful to the folks at ACT who allowed me to attend as a media member. I hope that over the next couple of days, I'm able to pull together some really interesting interviews, really interesting footage, and that this episode of Hammer Down, this sort of super episode, is a really fun one for you. Thanks for checking it out. Enjoy the show. So this is Jim Hurlis with CBRE. And Jim, so CBRE, let's start with the basics. What is CBRE?
CBRE is a real estate firm that specializes in brokerage, project management, and facilities management, among many, many other things as well. We're the largest firm in the world.
All right, so commercial real estate to we're at an expo for clean trucking and transportation. Where do you fit into that?
Yeah, so back in March of 21, actually, we had a great opportunity where one of our fleet operator clients came to us and said, we need to convert our fleet from combustion engines over to electric vehicles. We're not exactly sure how to do it, and what is that impact on our overall real estate portfolio going to look like? What is this? Do we just put chargers in the ground and at our leased sites, or what is the best way for us to really come forward and build out this infrastructure and what's its impact? So back in 21, we started this project, this initiative to see how we could actually support the industry, our clients, and the industry as a whole, the infrastructure providers, to determine the best places and strategy for deploying this infrastructure to capture the public charging, whether it's for these large fleet vehicles moving product close to the freight or close to the port for drayage type applications, or on the long haul. If I'm going from Los Angeles Port to Las Vegas, where we are today, where should we have our charging along the way, and how should we deploy this infrastructure? And CBRE was able to fill that hole and really support our clients identify those opportunities.
Okay, so everything you said is interesting.
Yeah.
let me start. When you talk to the electric companies, and from the trucking perspective, they're happy to say, listen, you have to create demand in order for me to say I'll put infrastructure in place. You're taking a different approach with that.
Correct. We're really focusing on strategy, knowing that we're going to have to build the infrastructure prior to the vehicles coming. The chicken and the egg, in my perspective, and what we've seen in the industry, is we really need to have that fueling infrastructure. It doesn't do good to have a truck that's going to be going on a long haul route that has nowhere to charge along the way, whether that's for hydrogen or for electric vehicles.
Sure.
When we're talking about shorter distances, last mile, drayage type concerns or routes rather, we're able to really focus and keep those more in a central location and even have a more simple solution, if you will, to that.
Now, when you talk to a trucking company or you talk to a warehouse and they say, look, we want to talk about electrification, what does putting enough charging infrastructure, what does that do to actually the value of a property? Is that good for it? Is it bad for it? Walk me through.
So that's a really great question. And we know that there is an absolute increase in the value of the property of that asset when we put that additional infrastructure in. If you think about it, you're bringing a lot of energy, a lot of opportunity. That one of the struggles that we see actually in the industry is the best use of property and the best use of real estate. So, while we want to go and deploy infrastructure at all of these different asset classes, sometimes the best use or the best rate of return for the investor is to do an industrial building. So oftentimes our biggest competitor for deploying this infrastructure is best use of the property. which again could be industrial, where I can get higher rent rates and higher returns.
Okay, so best use of property is a legal term? Is that a government term? Is that regulated? What does that mean?
That means how can I get the most money? If I'm going to develop a piece of property,
okay, got
and
it.
I'm the developer putting my money into the property, into that asset, what's the best rate of return, and what is the best use case? And in a lot of cases, we're competing a lot against industrial. However, there are some great segments of the industrial world, like the industrial offsite storage developers, where they traditionally store truck parking or trailers, but now they're able to convert an acre or two of that and maximize the usage of that portion of that property for electrification and overnight parking.
Got it. Okay. So basically, if I own a yard, I own a storage facility, the idea is if I put a couple of spots up there, theoretically, I can charge truckers to charge their truck. Is that?
That's exactly right. And then park it overnight as well.
Got it. Okay. So we're creating ancillary revenue streams with land that's going unused.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. How did you get into this?
You know, I raised my hand. Our leadership team at CBRE had some questions, and my background prior to this was in infrastructure for a large company, large infrastructure company, and I had some background and some knowledge around building up business models and figuring out the art of the possible. And quite honestly, can we make money for our shareholders? And can we get a rate of return and provide the outcomes that our clients are expecting from us? And that's really, I raised my hand and volunteered.
All right. So along those lines, one of the questions I ask every guest is, if you're talking to a younger version of yourself, or talking to a soon-to-be or a recent college grad who's thinking about supply chain or logistics, what's the piece of advice you'd give them?
You know, I would absolutely say, go out, and I'm sorry to say the phrase again, raise your hand, put yourself out there. If you don't understand something, ask a question, learn and grow. My degree is in philosophy, but I went in through the real estate world and got into real estate by selling office furniture, and then grew into infrastructure projects for data centers and into where I am now at CBRE. All of that was by taking risks, trusting in yourself, and really going out and making yourself vulnerable to a point, and not being afraid of failure.
What's the thing you're most excited about with ACT Expo? What's the thing you're hoping to bring home with you?
You know, I'm really excited to have conversations around capital and solving the capital issues that are out there, where we're having a lot of clients that have goals and sustainability goals to transition their fleet. However, they don't have the right funding mechanisms internally. So I'm really excited to be able to talk. I've got several meetings with several equity partners here. We've got meetings with end users or those fleet operators, and we're really wanting to put them together so that we can really grow these networks, so that we can drive EV adoption, help be that catalyst to, for broader EV adoption for longer haul vehicles as well.
Sure. I mean, so that is the biggest discussion, right? Like there's nobody who's against clean air. Nobody. Everybody's like, look, I like clean air.
Haven't met them yet.
Haven't met them yet. Everybody asks the same question: who's going to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
So it comes down to, is the shipper going to pay more for their goods? And that comes in a couple of different ways, right? Like that is I'm going to pay more per container, or I'm going to need more containers because I'm going to lighten the load in them, because an EV truck or a hydrogen truck weighs so much more. You have a 9,000 pound difference between an actual diesel truck and an EV. So therefore, the legal amount they're allowed to carry has to be lighter.
Yes.
Versus, do I ship more? How have you found, talking to capital partners, who does pay for it?
That's a great question. So obviously, first thing we look at is the federal grants and incentives. And actually, I'm going to take it a step further. It's not just the federal, it's the state, municipal, and even the utility grants and incentives that are available in most cases. So that's really a key place to start looking to how can we chip away at the capital costs right there, right? The other reality is equity partners that are out there. There's infrastructure funds like CBRE Investment Management as an example, who's out there supporting this industry by partnering with third-party operators to acquire land, do a lease back, so that they'll lease the facility or the dirt, if you will,
sure,
rather than have to purchase it outright themselves.
Got it.
So there's a lot of different partners, but I think it's a combination of incentives and grants from the utilities and the governments, capital partners and equity that's out there. And then ultimately it will come down to consumers. will at some point have to pay a little bit more because the cost of to the company itself is going up, and in order to be profitable, they have to adjust the rates. Their pricing as well. The position of the landlord is really we're talking about how landlords are looking at their current tenants that are looking to electrify. We're seeing some landlords are hesitant about allowing the infrastructure to be placed on site. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, who owns it at the end of your lease? How much term is left on your lease? If I have 7 years left on my lease, we know it's going to take 2 years to bring the infrastructure in. 5 years, I have to depreciate that asset. Depending on who's paying for all of that, the landlord wants you to rip it all out at the end because they don't know who their next tenant is or what kind of vehicles they're going to have that are going to be the requirement. So it becomes this conversation of, do we charge on site behind the fence? Do we charge off site? What is the risk and reward? What is our overall strategy? And then applying it across an entire strategy from that fleet owner and operator. Right. That's important. And the last thing I would say is, you brought up the weight of the vehicles. That is a very real scenario where municipalities are now having conversations with us and tenants and REITs, developers, landlords, about wear and tear on feeder streets coming into the industrial parks with the weight of these vehicles. And if you're in Arizona, you have an asphalt street and it gets hot and these big trucks kind of start trenching them out. That becomes a real problem and a real issue, as well as the asset, the loading bays. Who's doing all of these infrastructure upgrades and improvements as well at these locations. So there's a lot more than just pure infrastructure that needs to be invested in. It is an investment in the roadways. It's an investment in the parking infrastructure. Can I convert 20 diesel engines into 20 electric vehicles on the same parking lot? The answer is probably no, because I've got all my charging stations or posts, my bollards, my switchgear, batteries. Do I have a micro grid strategy I have to deploy to bring the capacity up? There's just so much more that goes behind this programmatic approach to deploying infrastructure for these fleet operators.
Sure. One thing we haven't touched on is solar. Are you helping, landlords? Are you helping companies put panels in place so that the infrastructure that they're also laying is more affordable, or theoretically more affordable? Because once you get through that upfront cost, solar is free. Are you helping with that conversion as well to drive down? So in LA Long Beach, for instance, if you charge between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., you should anticipate 3 to 4 times the cost of a typical diesel truck. Are you using solar to offset some of that?
Solar coupled with battery storage, you have to have that storage component as well to help offset that or to make use of the electrons during that period of time, right. To help shave the peak shaving. But a lot of the partners that we do work with are deploying solar as a part of the overall solution. There's a lot to it. You can have just the chargers, or you can have chargers and more of a strategy around incorporating solar, incorporating the battery storage, incorporating other microgrid technologies. Example of tracking CNG lines, and can we use CNG to generate power on site? Very expensive, yes, we understand that. Right. But can that bridge that gap if I need 10 megawatts and I only have 3 today? Perhaps. That's one of the solutions that's there.
Gotcha. What's the coolest deployment you've been a part of, or what's the most interesting thing you've seen along the way here? Who's unique?
Yeah, now I would say there's been some really great deployments that we've done in the healthcare sector to help them with their entire fleet transition. And while not heavy trucks, they're still in that area of having traveling nurses that need to build a programmatic approach to bringing their vehicles home at night, and sometimes they're going to the office. And then it's also bundling in the ownership of that vehicle themselves, so that in that scenario, they had a goal of converting about, they need to hit about 500 vehicles a year to hit their sustainability targets. Their capital plan only allowed about 100 to 150. We were able to work with some of our partnerships and develop a program that incorporated the vehicle ownership as well as the infrastructure. Okay. And they were able to get 400 vehicles a year. So that one it kind of makes me proud to help solve what keeps our clients up at night through some of our relationships, across the board with equity partners or with our third-party charging infrastructure providers.
Got it. You talked about home charging.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is not with Class 8 vehicles, perhaps, but with maybe a pickup truck or whatever. I'm going to bring my EV home. I'm going to charge it in place. Do you help companies figure out, one, how to set up the infrastructure in an employee's home and charge that charge back to the company, or where do you fall in that role?
We really don't participate in the residential charging. When I say residential, single family take home fleet kind of charging, that's not really where CBRE is focused and where we thrive. Multifamily scenarios, we absolutely have programs in place for that, but not on single family residents. A lot of times we will put them with our third party operators and let them kind of have their own home strategy, charging strategy, and lessons learned.
All right. Jim, I appreciate you being a guest.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Mike Bush, joined today with Carlo Rodriguez from Ryder Systems. Excited to chat with you, man. But isn't Ryder Systems the guy I go to like rent a truck in order to move my apartment?
Oh, thank you, Mike, for having me. Yeah, a lot of people think about Ryder and the yellow trucks in one way, but we are a 90-year-old company going back to 1933, and we had that consumer business for not a short period of time, but there was a stretch there over a couple decades, but we sold that business in the 90s. Our focus is transportation and logistics and perfecting the supply chains for our customers and to eventually help that end consumer. So that's why we're here.
Okay, now who is your customer? Walk me through the basic business model.
Yeah, so I mean, you could go through a day in the life of any individual, and you're going to touch Ryder, whether it's in the morning with what you eat, or going to work and getting on your computer, ordering pizza, getting meals delivered to your home. A lot of those companies that are doing that, driving your vehicle in the automotive space, a lot of companies that are doing that, they're using Ryder to transport their goods and provide their services. So a lot of times you'll see the company decaled and wrapped, but behind the scenes it's a Ryder lease truck or a truck running in dedicated transportation.
So sure, the way to think of this is you're kind of the guy behind the guy in trucking. It's,
Yes.
If I want to operate a trucking company, I can buy my own trucks, or maybe I should have a conversation with Ryder.
Yeah, we're the company behind the guy or the girl in trucking, and we've been doing it for a while, and we're trying to be that expert for our customers, and then helping also prospects outsource and just adding value.
Okay. So we're at a Clean Trucking Expo. What are we doing on the EV or the hydrogen space? Where does Ryder play in carbon neutrality?
Yeah, so last year in Anaheim, California, we launched Ryder Electric Plus. We're behind some of the collateral here, and we're here a year later. And we've been always at the forefront of testing new technology, whether it's natural gas or more efficient vehicles and engines, and even our electric vehicles early on. But starting in the early 2020s, you see more traditional OEMs coming to market with vehicles. Now you walk this floor, it's massive. It's the biggest expo. I think it's over 15,000 attendees.
Yep.
There's 80 vehicles outside in the ride and drive or demo area. So there's a lot going on in this space, a lot of momentum, and our customers need solutions. They need to know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So we did Ryder Electric Plus, which is a industry first turnkey solution where they could get electrification advisory services, they could get the actual vehicle, they could get the charging and EV charging infrastructure, they could get the maintenance and the telematics with one contact under one contract for one cost.
So you're sort of doing the trucking the truck as a service plus telematics and location. Is that?
It's not so much as a service, it's in our choice lease service solution offering. So it's a contract when it's choice lease, or it could also be in the rental space. It could be no commitment, rent it for a day, rent it for a week. We do have now light duty, medium duty, and coming soon here in a month or two, heavy duty in our rental fleet, EVs that customers could test and demo before they get into a long-term lease contract.
Got it. So of the EVs, I know you have to say I love all my children equally.
Yeah.
Is there a particular EV brand that you're really excited about, or a particular especially on the Class 8 side,
Yeah.
on the larger trucks. Is there a larger truck that really you've seen your customers kind of be surprised and delighted by?
Yeah, so right now the focus and where you see in a lot of applications an EV benefit compared to the ICE and internal combustion engine is it's light duty. It's that's the sweet spot. When you get up to medium duty, it becomes a lot more expensive. It could be 2x for the vehicle,
Right.
and then you're having this uphill climb of you know a situation where the fuel and the maintenance cost savings that come with EV is not enough to overcome that asset purchase.
Right.
So that's where you need grants and incentives and tax credits. And then heavy duty is really expensive now. So there's a lot of good options in the light duty space. I think depending on the customers in the application, some are very excited about some OEMs because it's a good fit, and others, are excited about other players. But you have Ford with their e-Transit, you have GM with their Bright Drop unit, Mercedes e-Sprinter that's coming soon, uh, Dodge e-ProMaster, Rivian is a nice vehicle. So there's a lot of different options, and even some I'm not mentioning in the light duty space. And then medium duty and heavy duty, the Freightliner
Right.
vehicle, Navistar has a straight truck, and then we're the kind of sexy one that we're kind of waiting to see is Tesla and the Semi keynote yesterday by Dan. That's a vehicle that is going to be great, I think, for the industry. It's going to create more competition in that Class 8 space where the price is very high. And then there's a lot of sensitivities for the fleets with mileage and range. So, that's going to be great for our industry. And Tesla themselves, Dan was saying this, it takes a village. I'm paraphrasing,
Sure, no,
but
of course,
we
of
need
course.
competition. We need everyone to come up with great solutions and good vehicles and really compete here.
How did you get into this? What attracted you to trucking, man?
So I am an attorney. So
Okay.
I started at Ryder as an in-house attorney in their law department in South Florida. They're headquartered there. And after 11 years working contracts and transactions and that type of thing, decided to move to the business side. So I've been on the business side for about 7 years, product management first, and now more focused on new products. And this latest role started late in 2022, managing our great team. Shout out to our team. Just do a great job in handling the ecosystem we discussed and the things you see at our exhibit with the solution.
So when it comes to managing the team and new products, what are the things that Ryder's done in the past, say, 3 months that have really been eye-opening to your customers?
Yeah, so the focus is first becoming an expert, uh, knowing what's going on, what's coming, monitoring the whether it's compliance and mandates or new grants. So being an expert is key, and then the carrots and the sticks, right? What grants, incentives, and credits are going to help customers adopt EVs and make it simpler from an economic standpoint. And then on the stick side, the compliance and
Right.
being an expert there and advising and trying to model out with our tools and resources in-house that we developed with this solution of what needs to be EV by when, what's it going to cost depending on customers' goals and desire.
My favorite question to ask everybody in this industry. If you're talking to a new or recent college grad, they're thinking maybe supply chain logistics is for me. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'd say, no matter the industry or sector, there's going to be exciting jobs that match well with different personalities. Uh, so you think about marketing and corporate communication and finance and sales and business development, um, accounting, the law department, right? So there's great matches no matter what the company because you need all these departments. So if you are into heavy duty vehicles or even medium or light duty and you want to join this movement that's happening now with sustainability because so much of carbon emissions is there's a big chunk that's caused by
Right.
fleets. So it's just a good way to make an impact. And that's a great thing about this job is if you're in the fleet and sustainability space, you're able to work, but you're also able to go home and feel good about giving back to the environment and doing your little part. So I would say explore it, reach out, get connected on LinkedIn, start seeing what may work for you, what might be a match, maybe even go to a trade show. But there's so many opportunities that in college, you and I probably would have never thought
No,
there
not
would
at all.
be a trade show this big on just commercial fleets and vehicles, right? You just think, oh, there's a truck on the turnpike or highway,
And you at that age, it was, my God, get out of the way, guys. Right?
Yeah.
That was that's me. Yeah,
or this, honk the horn.
Carly, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I try to stay active there. I try to post good updates there. Try to keep it fun and light as well. So LinkedIn's great. It's Carlo Rodriguez. Also Ryder.com is another good way to reach out. There's a special page just for electric vehicles and the Ryder Electric Plus solution. And then Ryder System Inc. is on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. I think we're on most social media channels. So reach
And
out.
on Market Scale as of now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Appreciate
There we
it, man.
go.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for
Good
having me.
talking to you.
Thank you.
Terry O'Day from InCharge. Welcome to Hammer Down. Tell me a little bit
Pleasure
about
to meet
yourself, man.
I'm Terry O'Day, and I'm a co-founder of InCharge Energy. I live in Santa Monica, California, where we're headquartered, and I am now on my 5th EV startup.
Okay, let's start with the most recent one.
Yeah.
What does InCharge do?
InCharge is a turnkey provider of fleet services for electrification. So we come in and we can do the design and engineering, installation, the hardware, software, and we stay behind and do the service for chargers across all of North America.
Got it. So you're not quite the truck as a service guy, but you're the, hey, you got a truck that's electric. We're going to make sure it's always charged and running and basically where it needs to be.
That's right. For the most part, we meet fleet managers when they have begun their journey of thinking about what trucks they want to deploy or what school buses or delivery vehicles. And then we talk to them about how to best provide the charging solutions for those vehicles.
Okay. What are the common top 2 or 3 things where fleets fall down? Where do fleets screw up? What are the 3 things if you're going this journey, make sure you do ABC?
Yeah, I would say number 1 in complexity of the products, right? So a lot of fleets are choosing products that are either untested or built for public charging markets or retail charging. You want something that's fleet specific. Number 2, you want to have something that you know works together. So if you start pulling together, oh, I want this piece of hardware and that piece of hardware and this kind of software and this service team, you're going to get into trouble trying to get it to all work together.
Okay, got it.
Particularly in the medium and heavy duty space, the vehicles are still early days. And the interoperability with the charging solution is a meaningful challenge.
Now, when you say interoperability with the charging solution, this is like Apple back in the day when it had a different plug than everybody else had? Or is this more along the lines of the software and the charging equipment won't talk to the software in the truck?
For the most part, we're in a good spot with the connectors. Okay, now there is this dynamic with Tesla that's come in with their connector, and the vehicle manufacturers are all adopting that. So we do have a transition moment associated with that. And our chargers provide both the standard CCS, it's called connector, or the Tesla Max connector. However, what I'm describing is a little different. So the actual ability for the charger to communicate with the truck needs to be confirmed for the fleet manager. And so let me give you an example. The vehicle you want, when you plug it in at 6 p.m., you want it to start charging at 10 p.m.
Right.
Because the electricity might be cheaper at that time of day.
Exactly right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so in order for that to happen, your charger might be scheduled to start at 10 p.m. But when it sends the signal to the truck, if the truck's turned off, it goes to nowhere.
Got it.
So the vehicle manufacturer has to be able to receive that signal, wake up the truck, and start charging. And that's where the manufacturers are still not quite there yet. And InCharge Energy has a laboratory where we are working with engineers from all of the major OEMs to integrate our chargers to make sure those kinds of things work well. Similarly, a vehicle manufacturer might do a firmware update on their software on the vehicle. We need to know that because that firmware might knock out the ability to charge on those chargers, right? So we work together with their engineers to make sure that our firmware happens, they know about it, their firmware updates happen, and we're integrated. And those are the kinds of failures that are real bugaboos that you just didn't know because you wake up one day and somebody updated a firmware over the air and all of a sudden your vehicle's didn't charge overnight. You're like, oh my God, what do I do today? I don't have any revenue.
Right, of course. You said this is your 5th startup. How did you walk me through? Is this like a straight line path into InCharge, or is this kind of meandering approach, man?
It was a straight line with one jump.
Okay.
So in the early days of the EV industry, I started with Edison International. I started 2 companies there doing EV charging, one in industrial and one in on-road vehicles. We did a couple of other companies. This was the heyday of energy deregulation in California, and at Edison we thought we would print money with the Edison brand on it. One of those companies persisted and is now the standard in airport ground support equipment electrification.
Okay.
I left there and founded the first rental company in the country that rented only electric cars.
Got it.
And I had 5 makes of cars from the major automakers, and then we went into natural gas and hybrid electric cars. We got out to 16 airports in 5 states, and I couldn't get enough cars. This was the days of who killed the electric car, if you know that story. And had to sell that to a major rental car company, and that was the hiatus. That was the skip where I went into philanthropy.
Okay. Got it.
So I ran a foundation in California that was starting environmental activist groups all over California and Mexico. So I was still doing startups, but in a nonprofit space.
Got it. Okay.
And the EV industry started coming back to life, and I was going to be damned if I was going to sit on the sidelines for it.
Sure.
So I joined the founding team of EVgo.
Okay.
And built out EVgo to the largest public charging provider in North America, and then sold that to private equity. Had a stint running a German company, investments in U.S. charging, so did a startup there. But what changed over these years is that we were always very focused on the most important things with EVs. Do you know the 3 most important things about an EV?
So the battery,
the battery, and the battery.
There we go. Yes.
Right. And so when we were focused on these very expensive batteries, we used, the automakers designed small vehicles to maximize the utilization of a battery and not go over the price abilities of a consumer. So you had like 2-seat sports cars, and then you had like Honda Civics and those kinds of vehicles. About 6 years ago, huge volume of production came online of batteries globally for transportation, and prices plummeted by like 70%. And at that moment, we looked at the dynamics of the industry, and we said, we can now beat gas and diesel on a per mile basis. And if that's true, then you no longer want to be in those fuel efficient vehicles. You want to go after the most fuel hogs, because the more fuel consumed, the bigger the savings opportunity. And that's when we said the fleet market's going to take off. And we looked at the industry and said, there aren't really good fleet solutions out there. We started the company selling multiple makes of chargers, multiple types of software, and most of it had been optimized for public retail charging for light duty vehicles. It had a lot of bells and whistles, credit card payment solutions, and mobile apps for drivers. And those are all really great. Like, you can still have them for a fleet, but complexity adds failure points, and failure points are a problem for fleets because they need reliability as their number one factor. And no matter how reliable your system might be, it breaks because people are using it. They're plugging into it every day. It's truck drivers, or it's like, people who don't own the vehicle necessarily, right? It's operators. So it's going to break, and that means you need a technician team. So we built a team of technicians across the country. They drive EVs and they test the chargers with their own vehicles. They go out to your site to fix your charger. They don't get home if it doesn't work.
Got it. That's a good point. Yeah, that's a hell of an incentive. Yeah. So one of the things you talked about, was the credit card component of this, and so the company I work for has EVs deployed, and we've actually started to talk to some of the other trucking companies to say, can we do sort of a charging exchange program where if my truck is out near you, I might call you and say, hey, can I borrow your charger for a couple hours or vice versa?
Yes.
Are you, when you talk about interoperability, are you building that ability into all the InCharge solutions?
Yeah, our In-Control platform is a software solution that we built for fleets. So ground up, it is designed to do what a fleet needs and not everything else, all of those bells and whistles. But it will track all of your kilowatt hours used, and you can do a private party-to-party contract with another fleet and exchange that information and pay each other's bills when it comes due.
Got it. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, if you're talking to somebody who's new to the industry or somebody who just graduated college and they're thinking about getting into supply chain and logistics, what advice would you give them?
My advice is get into a space where you have an organization where there's a lot of folks that are experts that you can learn from. Show up to work first, go home last. Read everything that comes into the organization, learn from everybody in that space, and you'll soon find that when you're showing up, you demonstrate some competence, people will begin to ask you to take more responsibility, and it'll happen fast. It's a dynamic space. We're looking for good people who are motivated and take ownership for the end result for a customer. And I think if you keep that mentality, you'll do well. A lot of young people today too, I would say, are relying on technology for communications, and they'll send an email and think they're done. It doesn't really work. You still do have to pick up the phone. You still do have to go to talk to somebody in person, and this conference kind of demonstrates that. There's a value that you cannot exchange for an online communication.
For sure. Terry, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Great meeting you.
All right, cool, guys. I'm excited to be joining Alexia Bednars from Nikola. Alexia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So, as stated, Alexia Bednars, I lead sustainability for Nikola Corporation.
Okay, so Nikola is one of the cleanest trucking companies out there, leading sustainability. What does that actually mean?
That means that we inherently have a sustainable product, but we want to practice what we're preaching. And so we look internally to ensure that we're also adopting sustainable values, taking a look at our environmental footprint, our social impact, and our governance structures to ensure they're aligning with our sustainability goals.
Okay, so baselining it from the beginning, tell me a little bit about Nikola. What is it that the company offers? Where are you heading, etc.?
Absolutely. So we're an original equipment manufacturer of two different purpose-built zero tailpipe emission vehicles. One is a battery electric vehicle and the other is a fuel cell. And because we understand there's this poultry problem, the chicken and the egg, you can't have a product without the fueling solutions to support it. We also have an energy dimension of our company called Hyla that builds out the hydrogen fueling ecosystem. We also have a few interim charging assets that we can deploy to kind of bridge the gap while permanent infrastructure is being built for charging.
Gotcha. And as you've gone, what's been sort of what's been the uptake, or how are most trucking companies thinking about it? How are folks receiving the Nikolas?
I think really well. Seeing is believing. When they get in the trucks, they understand that kind of the future is here and now, that we can have zero tailpipe emission vehicles deployed within the year. There are solutions available. And the folks that I work with often have ambitious sustainability goals or CEO board pay or employee bonuses based off of performance and sustainability. So they're highly motivated to achieve decarbonization. And they do realize that there's a lot of decarbonization value or decarbonization for your buck in the Class 8 truck space. They inherently, though there's fewer Class 8 trucks on the road, they produce on average more emissions than, say, a passenger car. So it's on a scale of 1 to 23.
Right. Now, one of my favorite things about the Nikola trucks is the fact that it's a cab over, meaning that the actual driver sits above the wheel and it's a flat nose. So everybody who's on Twitter is saying, oh, that's a cab over, it must be in Europe. You guys are correcting that for us, which is wonderful. So thank you. It's one of my favorite little things because the Twitterverse goes crazy over that. Yeah. So how did you get into this? How did you start out? What attracted you to Nikola?
Sure. Well, I've been in the sustainability industry for over a decade. Prior to this, I worked for U-Haul International. And while I was at U-Haul managing their sustainability team, we did do fleet electrification studies. Okay. So they're a transportation-focused company as well, and that's always been a passion of mine. But when I joined the Nikola team, I saw that they were a pioneer leading in this space. not afraid to make zero emissions their legacy, and that was what was really attractive. Not to mention, like I've stated, just the impact. We know that about 28% of emissions in the U.S., according to the EPA, is attributed to transportation, and of that portion of the pie, 23% is attributed to Class 8 trucks. So the impact is great in implementing zero emission trucks and how we can decarbonize.
Sure. So my favorite question to ask everybody, if you're talking to your younger self or talking to a newer recent college grad who's thinking about trucking as an industry, thinking about logistics or transportation or even supply chain, what's the piece of advice you'd give them?
Ooh. I would not be afraid to kind of follow your heart and your interests and your passions, and see where that leads you. And then also, by experience here, we're pioneering solutions, and sometimes it's difficult, right? If it was easy, everyone would do it. You can get beat up at times and jumping over hurdles because there's no path to follow. But I wouldn't be afraid of that. I would take that challenge head on. Don't be afraid of new experiences and challenges.
Alexia, if somebody wants to get in touch, how do they do it?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me Alexia Bednars. You can also send an email to alexia.bednars@nikolamotor.com.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So Jerry, what do you do with US Energy?
So I'm working on branching our large company of US Energy that's done more traditional fuels into the electrification sector, and we're doing that with our initial product offering, VoltVolt. So VoltVolt is an electrification offering that is a purpose-built, on-site, on-demand machine developed for EV charging. VoltVolt is a product of US Energy, whose parent company is US Venture, which is a large privately held company located in Wisconsin. We're the 5th biggest company in the state. And US Energy is dedicated to bringing transportation fuels to a variety of different customers, everything from legacy fuels now to electrification products. So what we do is within this shipping container here, we take either renewable or standard natural gas, run it through a genset, turn that into an electron, send that through our electrical room, through our purpose-built machine to do EV dispensing.
Okay, I got it. So I take a renewable fuel or natural gas.
Yep.
I put it in the machine. It then powers my electric truck. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, so if I think that through, the idea behind electricity and electrification was we don't have to rely on natural gas. We can go away from that. Is that defeating the purpose, or are we getting better? Like, is there a comparison where I say, X gallons of gas equals Y mileage per gallon in a truck versus in a charging it's better? Walk me through.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to think about that. So one, we're bringing power, 3-phase power, to where it otherwise wouldn't be. Got it. So that can either be because it's in a really remote location, or it can be in a really congested location as well. So this is what we like to think of this is a pragmatic step on the ladder to more zero emission vehicles on the road.
Okay.
And then getting more down to the nuts and bolts of it, having more zero emission vehicles on the road means we're displacing diesel trucks on the road. And if you even look at our worst case, which is CNG fossil in versus the diesels we're displacing on the road, there's a net carbon reduction there.
Okay, got
and
it.
That's not even to get into, we are also able to supply this with renewable natural gas, and the percentage of renewable natural gas that we pump into it brings down the carbon intensity of the whole machine.
All right. So if I'm a trucking company and I put a unit like this maybe in my facility or at a yard where I'm doing some remote deliveries, do you bring the fuel to me? Do I have to set that up with somebody else? How does the fuel get into the machine?
Yeah, so there's really 3 different ways that could happen. Okay. The first way is we could actually tie directly into a natural gas pipeline if you have that available on your site. And that's really convenient because then we don't have to worry about any kind of refueling operations. And also, if we use a natural gas pipeline, we can deliver electricity at 14 cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
Which is an amazing rate compared to what you're going to get it off the grid, basically anywhere in the country. Alternatively, if you don't have a natural gas pipeline nearby, we have versions of this where there's onboard compressed natural gas storage in the rear. Or if you need, if you're going to use it really pretty frequently, we can connect to a tube trailer. So another trailer that would show up as a large container of compressed natural gas, and it would connect to the system.
Okay, gotcha. How did you get into this?
So so I've only been doing all fuels for transportation for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was doing electrification projects for the U.S. Navy through a private defense contractor.
Okay.
But then I I mean, long story short, I was going back for graduate school and I made a few connections, and I was excited to apply my experience of running large-scale naval programs to solving today's issues in the transportation sector.
Got it. So Jerry, we're at ACT Expo, which is all about advanced clean transportation. What's the coolest thing you've seen other than your own product?
Right.
You know, what's the coolest thing you've seen, or the most exciting thing you've seen, or what's a takeaway you'd hope to share out?
Yeah. So I mean, number one,
Of course.
most exciting thing
Right.
here. We already know
Absolutely.
that. But I think number two is just the momentum behind this whole movement. I mean, the excitement, the buzz, it's there. There's a sense of optimism in the air. You know, the feeling around advanced clean or alternative clean transportation feels a little bit cyclical.
Sure.
But here at ACT, it feels really like almost like the beating heart of the industry. And you can tell that there's tons of smart people working together, all kind of moving towards the same shared vision of the future. And that's a pretty cool thing to see.
So one of the questions I ask every guest on the show is, if you were to talk to either your younger self or talk to a new or recent college grad who's thinking about supply chain or logistics as an industry, what's the piece of advice you would give that person?
I would just say get to work. I mean, it's a great industry to be in. It's what runs our economy. I mean, we can't sell or make goods without the movement of products. So supply chain is a really critical part of it, and there's a lot of exciting jobs out there for it.
Awesome. Jerry, thanks for being on the show, man. Jerry, tell me a little bit about the company.
So ZevX, awesome company, really focused on providing mobile charging solutions to the EV industry, and to kind of the genset event space, construction space industry. We build our own battery packs. We design all of our own systems, van-based, trailer-based.
Okay.
Really exciting opportunity.
So what's your perfect customer? Who's your perfect use case?
So the perfect use case is really split into multiple things, right? The goal is going green.
All right.
Right. So in the genset world, it's eliminating those diesels, getting to a silent product that provides that output for, concert events, sporting events, things like that. But on the other side, it's really fleets.
Okay.
Fleets that are looking for EV charging solutions, where the infrastructure is not there, and the OEMs can't deliver enough EVs because there's no infrastructure to charge them yet.
Got it.
So it's kind of those combinations.
So there's two very specific use cases. One of them is any place you'd see a big generator, whether it's a concert, whether it's any place, maybe construction for outdoor lighting.
Right.
And then the other one is if you're a fleet and you're going to go someplace where you're going to need to recharge your truck, you guys are the ones to call.
Exactly, because the infrastructure's not there, but the OEMs are ready to deliver.
Got it. Okay.
We're that gap filler.
Now, how did you get into this?
40 years, I know, I don't look that old, but 40 years in power electronics, battery technology, software. And this is really the only company that brought it all together and provided that solution, which to me is really exciting.
Okay, very cool. What were you doing before?
Before I came here, I was actually running a software company that was looking at logistics and security all over the world.
Okay, now if I tie in that experience, does it make it so you're absolutely the right person to say, here's where you're going to put your temporary unit in order to improve your operations? Is that kind of the...
Exactly, right? It's leveraging telematics, leveraging the software of the fleet, and then tying those things together so we really offer that total solution.
Got it, okay. Greg, one of my favorite questions to ask is, if you were to talk to your younger self or talk to, a recent college grad about our industry and say, here's something I wish I would have known, or here's the best advice I'd give you, what do you think it is?
So it'd be the same thing I've given my children. Take the chance.
Okay.
Right? Don't settle, take the chance and trust in yourself.
Tell me a little bit about your company. Tell me about AutoFleet.
Yeah, AutoFleet, we focus exclusively on fleets and mobility operators. So our customers are large rental car companies, car sharing operators, taxi companies, really anything from a scooter to a car to a truck.
Okay.
We provide three core solutions: a fleet planning simulator. We provide a fleet management optimization layer to orchestrate all the fleet management tasks, and a turnkey solution for operating any kind of ride-based service, both last mile delivery and passenger-based services like taxi, ride hail, school transport, non-emergency medical transport, and others.
Does that sort of make you like a transportation management system for everybody outside of Class 8 fleets, or how should I think about that?
Yeah, so really focused exclusively on fleets, but really a wide range of different verticals.
Okay.
So we have micro-mobility customers, car sharing operators, taxi, rental, what have you. We even have some trucking customers as well.
Okay, gotcha. And how did you get into it? What prompted this?
Yeah, so we before founding AutoFleet, I was head of product at a company called Get, which is in the ride-hailing industry. And we kind of saw the opportunity of focusing on fleets, asset-heavy fleets. We think that they play a very important part in the value chain of mobility already today, but even more so in the future.
Okay.
And we just want to focus on them. Yeah.
So sort of the Intel inside for, I guess like the Uber of freight almost, or kind of the technology back end to enable.
Yeah,
is the way to
exactly.
think of
So all the software needed to operate a fleet, all the way from fleet planning to managing the actual fleet and all the fleet management tasks and operating a ride-based service. Yeah.
it. Okay. So if I break that down, the first component of that is smart routing, right? So is that something you offer? Are you building it on AI? Are you looking at historicals? How do you come up with your routing recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do on the routing side. There's actually a few steps to it. One is future order planning. So as future orders come in, whether it's future orders for school transport or delivery or what have you, basically considering all the constraints of the rides, the vehicles, the drivers, and so on, and creating a master route plan.
Okay.
Then real time dispatching those rides to drivers with very accurate ETAs, also considering rides that come in kind of ASAP. And then finally, as those rides get dispatched, also re-optimizing them. So looking at all the drivers that might be delayed versus the ones that are kind of ahead of time and shuffling the rides between them.
Okay.
Overall, to really provide kind of really good SLAs.
Okay. Now, one of the things you said that was really interesting to me, you talked about understanding the limits of vehicles, right? So if I'm hearing that correctly, it's if you're driving an 18-wheeler that's an EV, you obviously have a limited range as opposed to just stop and get diesel. Are those the types of variables you're focused on?
Yeah, so the constraints that we look at in the vehicles span across capacity, weight, and number of passengers that can ride in those vehicles. And if we're talking about electric vehicles, then definitely the state of charge. And we consider also when and where the vehicles should charge.
Okay.
So for example, if you just go according to a static threshold and say, oh, when the vehicle hits 20% charge, that's kind of a naive approach to go about it. Because for example, if you consider future demand, you may want to charge the vehicle in advance of that demand,
Right.
even if it's at 60, 70% charge. So taking all these things into consideration, all those constraints, in order to create the most optimal outcome.
Okay, gotcha. So am I correct? You're also including the ability to like track deliveries, track motion. So if to fleet management as sort of a delivery service, if somebody shows up like DoorDash, DoorDash tells me, hey, your delivery was made. Are you doing that type of things on the back end as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we track all the vehicles in very high granularity. So we use both telematics data as well as our own driver app that we collect data.
Okay.
So sub-second location data. So you could track all the vehicles on the map. You can see historical reporting. You have full audit of exactly what happened in retrospective and so on. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And then if I wanted to in freight, for instance, uploading documents or getting once I've got the signature on a bill of lading, a proof of delivery, etc. In the app, do you have the ability to scan that stuff, upload it into a single portal?
Exactly. So proof of delivery, whether it's a signature, whether it's taking a picture, whether it's scanning a barcode, that's all available inside the driver app as well. Yeah.
Kelly, one question I try to ask every guest: if you're talking to somebody who's new or thinking about supply chain, maybe it's a career change, maybe they just graduated, what's the best piece of advice you can give them?
Specifically for in the mobility space?
In mobility or supply chain?
Yeah. So I would say, like I came from the industry, right? And so I had kind of an unfair advantage of knowing exactly what's going on before starting the company. So I would say, take your time, get to know the industry that you're in. You'll be surprised at the kind of the nuances that you find, and then I think you would be able to cater the best solution to based on the experience that you've gained before.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it, man.